Hi, you guys hear me?
Yes, Kavadaha. A
Okay,
little bit
we'll try it again.
interrupted, but
We'll try it again. Seems to be a little bit better. Yeah, okay.
Yes, it looks much better.
Yeah, we are connected. Okay. Better late than never. I'm sorry, but okay, we'll get started. So I think we're going to Vav. It says over here, Ve'im ta'ah v'lo izkir, right? This is an important thing. V'lo izkir shel Shabbat. What happens if you didn't mention Shabbat in Birkat Hamazon, right? On Shabbat. So in other words, you didn't say the bracha, let's say the insert there. Ta'ah v'lo izkir b'yom tov. Or you didn't, or let's say you didn't mention Yom Tov on the holiday. So what happens over there? Let's read inside the tour what he says there. So it says like this, right? If you didn't mention that, let's say on Shabbat, the insert. So what you do is instead you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Shenatan Shabbatot Imnucha Le'amo Yisrael Be'ava Leot Ubrit Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbat. That's what you do in order to make up the fact that you missed let's say. If you look in the Siddur, it's there. This thing. So that's regarding Shabbat. Now it tells you about Yom Tov. Ta velo izkir yaleh ve'avo on Yom Tov. If you didn't mention yaleh ve'avo on Yom Tov, what do? Omer Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Yamim Tovim LeYisrael Le'sarson U'Lesimcha Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Yisrael VeHazemanim. This is the prayer you say, right? If you forgot it. So this is the insert that you do afterwards if you forgot it. So let's see about Yosef, what he says about that. If you look in your Siddur, Birkat Hamazon, you'll find these things. So it says Bet Yosef here, Pashut Perek Shlosha Shachlu. It's in the Gemara, Mem Tet Amud Aleph, in Brachot. So it says there, Ve'en Muskar B'Gemara Shem Malchut, right? So it says, but over there in the Gemara, it doesn't mention the name of God or the kingdom. In other words, it doesn't mention to make like a full blessing. So that therefore, right, the commentaries had a dispute about this regarding what exactly the text is that you're supposed to say. But that Rabbeinu Yonah shechotem bahem b'shem malchut. So the Rabbeinu Yonah says you got to do everything with the name of God and the kingdom, the whole thing, the whole blessing. Katav berachot chaim shechen mefurash b'Yushalmi. So that's the way it's written in Yushalmi. וגם הרשב"א כתב מסתברא דכל הנה בשם נינהו. The Rashba also says, right? So he says that it's reasonable to say, probable, whatever, makes sense, that all these things are with the full name of God and everything, the whole thing. Okay. וכן נמי חתימתן, also when you seal it, בשם, you do it with the name of God, ואף על פי שאם היה מזכירן, and even though if he would mention them במקומם in their place, לא היו בשם, they would not be said with the name of God, like, with a blessing. היינו משום דכל שהוא מזכיר בברכה הסמוכה, הרי הן נכללות בברכת שיש בה מלכות בפתיחתה וחתימתה. דכל שסמוכה, הרי היא כאילו פתחת וברוך, שפתחת הראשון, שפתיחת הראשונה כוללת את כולן. So this is an important thing he's saying over here, which is like this, that it's sort of like a, ironic situation here. Why? Because if you say Retzei, which is the insert for Shabbat, if you say it in the right place, so there it won't be in the format of a blessing. But when you do it as a makeup, afterwards, then all of a sudden it has a format of a blessing. So why is that, right? It should be, not like that. It's just the opposite of what it should be. So he says, right, the reason is because when you're putting it as an insert in the original place where it's supposed to be, over there, it's really like a part of another blessing, you're inside another blessing. And therefore, that's the reason why you don't have a format there of a full blessing there. Because you're inside another blessing. But when you're doing it afterwards, as a makeup, so there it becomes like a blessing by itself because it's not really inside another blessing. And this is the reason why you it's going to have a different format. So there's going to have to be a blessing there in the end, if you do it as a makeup. But if you do it in the original place where it's supposed to be, over there it won't have a blessing. That's what he's saying. Okay, so let's move on a little bit. It says, he says that's the way the French rabbi seems to say also. He says, this is the Rashba, okay? Right, Rashba, yeah, okay. So now, Samak also said this, Arif. It seems like the riff from the riff also like that, it says. Gam ken nireh midivre Rambam, also from the Rambam, he says, seems like that. V'katav Aruch, says the Rosh regarding this, and even though this blessing is juxtaposed to another blessing, Baruch, it still comes with the Baruch in the beginning. Because it's rabbinical. Just like Tov Mativ. And also it's like something occasional. Right? Why is it occasional? Because it's only when you make a mistake this happens, right? When you forget to say it in the right place. Interesting concept. Okay, so then Muzan Rabbeinu ואם מקרא שבת ביום טוב בהד דעדדה. So what about if you have Shabbat and Yom Tov together? What do you do there? Right? כולל ברוך שנתן ושבתות במנוחה. So then what you do is you include one. Let's see how the Torah says it inside. I don't want to guess the language here. Better to look at it. So it says the Torah. Right, so it says like this: "Ve'im mikra Shabbat ve'Yom Tov behadei nadadei." If Shabbat and Yom Tov come together, kolel ve'omer Baruch Shenatan Shabbatot Menucha ve'Amo Yisrael ve'Ava Leot Brit ve'Yom Tov le'Amo Yisrael. Right. So what he's saying is like this, right? If they come together, Shabbat and Yom Tov, might as well put both of them in one insert. Like one blessing there. That's what he says. Include both holidays occasions in one insert in one blessing. ששון שמחה וזיכרון ברוך אתה השם מקדש השבת וישראל והזמנים. Right? That's what he says. But in truth, right? Let's see if that's the halacha is like that. In the Siddur, I don't remember it being written this way. But maybe I missed something. Let's see what the Bet Yosef says. So it says here like this, "Chen katvu sham tosfot." That's what it says in Tosfot also, to do it like this. והראש, וכתבו אגרות מימון, פרק ב', וכן שבת וראש חודש, אך שאינו חותם בראש חודש. Right? It says the same thing also, he says, when it's Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, except that even though he doesn't, seal it on Rosh Chodesh, you don't seal it. We don't seal it on Rosh Chodesh. And the reason is because it's not there's no obligation to have a meal on Rosh Chodesh. It's a mitzvah, but not obligation. Okay, that's interesting. So that's the way he says it. But interesting, right? To actually see if that's the way it's written in our Siddur. Let me just take a look at that for a second. Let's take a look. Okay. Yeah, actually, he does have it. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. So the question is, why don't I remember it? If it's like this in the Siddur. You know why? Because it's not very common. You forget both these. When you forget one, that can happen, right? But forgetting both of them is not very common. So it doesn't really, happen very often, something like that. But okay, so then we have nothing to worry about. Exactly what it says here. That's exactly what we have. So okay, let me just read on with this, and then we'll right. Yeah, actually, let me just before we go on, I just want to explain to you what we're talking about here, right? So I'm not sure if you guys understand, are following me all the things I'm saying here. We already mentioned yesterday, right, that when we do Birkat Hamazon on Shabbat or Yom Tov, we have a special insert, right, for Shabbat and Yom Tov. So Shabbat is called Retzeh, and the Yom Tov is called Yaleh V'Yavo. So these two inserts, sometimes a person can forget them. It happens, happens to the best of us. So in the case like that, what do you do, right? So coming here and telling you, what you do is you do a makeup, you say a special blessing to make it up. So this blessing is said after you finish the blessing already. As a separate blessing, it's said afterwards. So that's the way it's done, and it's like it's a special blessing with the name of God and everything, the whole thing. So now what we're saying is like this. What about if you forgot both of them, right? You forgot Yalev Yavo, you forgot Retzeh, you forgot both of them. So now what you do is, right, you do an insert blessing like that at the end, where both the Shabbat and the holiday are included in one shot. So as I find in my Siddur that it's actually there, this thing. It's just that not very often that you encounter something like this in real life. Since it's not very common, you miss both of them. Okay, whatever. So that's the story there. If you look in your Siddur, you'll find all these things. It's there. Okay, great. So let's move on. So he says then, מה שכתב רבנו, בהי דסגי בהי ברכה, אנא מילה דלא פתח בעתו ומיטיב. Right, so now we have to read on in the tour a little bit, and this is also an important point over here in the tour. So we'll go out there and read it. So it says the tour like this: So he says that which we say. That we can put this insert in, to make it up. Right? That's only if he didn't start the blessing of Atov Metiv. Right? But once he starts Atov Metiv, he cannot do this insert anymore there. So what does he have to do now? So depending on the situation, sometimes he has to go back and do Birkat Hamazon again, since he missed the insert. Sometimes he does not, right? So we're going to get into that, Bezat Hashem, to see when he has to go back and when not. But just pointing out here that there's no way to make it up afterwards, really. Once you start the blessing Hatov Mitiv. That's exactly what he says here too, right? Jose Rosh, Lerosh. What does that mean? You gotta go back to the beginning of Birkat Hamazon. You lost everything. So you gotta go back. So in Jewish prayers, this is like it's a recurring theme, in many places where if you forgot a certain insert, and you didn't mention the special holiday or occasion, whatever that it is, you do have to go back sometimes and start again. In many cases, in some cases you don't. Also, you have to know the rules, right, of all these things. But here, in this case, if you missed it, you have to go back and start again. That's what it says. In general, that's the way it is. There are some exceptions also. So we're going to talk about that. But anyway, that's what it's saying over here in the tour. So let's go to Bet Yosef. So Bet Yosef just brings you the source, right? It says Pashut Tu Sham Amud Bet. It's there in the Gemara also, right? In Brachot, this halakha is taught there as well. Okay, great. So then he says afterwards, the tour mentions Katada Adoni of Yorsal. It says the Rosh. Yesh Omrim Kivan Shelo Siyem Brachat Atov Metiv. Some say that since he didn't conclude yet Atov Metiv, which is the fourth blessing of Birkat Hamazon, and Sarich Lachazor Rosh Birkat Hamazon. You don't have to go back to the beginning of Birkat Hamazon. Ela Lechatchila Bonei Yerushalayim. So all you have to do is go back to Bonei Yerushalayim. Zed Dat Rabad B'Asakot. That's what the Rabad holds. וכן דת רבנו יונה, also רבנו יונה, והרשב"א also, ותמה משום דלא גרה ברכת הטוב ומטיב ממי שרגיל לומר תחנונים. So he says, why? What's the reason why? Because the Tov Metiv is not any less than that which we're accustomed to say tachanunim, right? Supplications, achat filato, after the person's prayers, amidah, sheim ta'a velo izkir rosh chodesh ba'avodah. Then if he forgot, and he didn't mention, right, Rosh Chodesh in the Avodah, which is the Thanksgiving blessing, right? Modim. I'm sorry. No, it's not. It's not the Modim. It's the one before that, right? Retzeh. So if he didn't mention Rosh Chodesh there, calls man shelo siyam b'tachanonim, as long as he didn't finish yet the supplications and tzarich lachazor kol atfilah, you don't have to go back and say the whole prayer again. Hachinam here also it says calls man shelo siyam birkat tov metiv. Also here in the Birkat Hamazon, if you don't conclude tov metiv and tzarich lachazor barech birkat hazan, you have to go back and do Birkat hazan again. Ela chozer letchilat bonei Yerushalayim. So what do? You go back to the beginning of the blessing of Yerushalayim. Katav Rosh below mistaberli. So says Rosh, I don't hold by this. Doesn't sound right to me. The Shani Hatam the Shalosh Brachot Achronot Chashuvot Kibra Achad Bracha Achad. So he says there it's different in the Amidah. Why? Because the last three final blessings are considered to be like one unit. Shareh im ta'a, because if he made a mistake, velo iskir b'sim shalom. If he made a mistake, he didn't mention the Sim Shalom, the last blessing, Sefer Chaim, right, in the book of life, in Aseret Yeshua, in the 10 days of penitence. Also, Ketov HaChaim Lechaim, which is in Modim, this insert there. The Dibre Ri Katav Lemala, according to Ri that we wrote above, the Machazrin Oto, that we make him go back, Eno Chozer Leota Bracha Shedileg Ba. He doesn't return to that blessing that he skipped. Then he goes back to the beginning of Retzeh. Because that series of three blessings, the last three blessings of the Amidah are considered like one unit. Okay. Therefore, you have to go back. Rashi at the beginning. And that's what Rashi says. But can that Rambam? So the Rambam says also in second parak. Rambam veRosh veRashi maskimim ledat echad. So he says since Rambam and Rosh and Rashi agreed to one opinion, that's how we pass. He says. Okay, great. So that was Vav. So we'll see Shulchan Aruch here. Let's see what it says. So it says like this: Tav lo is kir shel Shabbat. Let's say he made a mistake, right? He didn't mention Shabbat in Birkat Hamazon. In other words, he didn't put the insert in there. Omer Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Shabbatot v'Menucha Le'amo Yisrael Be'ava Leot Ul'Baribrit Baruch Ata Hashem Mekadesh Shabbat. So this is the insert that he puts in there. It's like a separate blessing, right? After he finishes the third blessing. That's the way he does it. Okay, so if he made a mistake and didn't mention Yom Tov, Omer Baruch Ata Hashem, then he says like this: Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Yamim Tovim LeYisrael Et L'Sason L'Simcha Et Yom Chag Ploni Hazeh, with this holiday, Baruch Ata Hashem Mekadesh Yisrael VeHazimanim. That's how he does the insert for Yom Tov. So then he says, right, what about if you miss both of them? It's Yom Tov and Shabbat. Yom Tov Shabbat. V'yomer Shenatan Shabbatot B'Menucha L'Amo Yisrael V'Yara V'Leotot B'Brit L'Yamim Tovim. That's what he's and also Yamim Tovim L'Sason L'Simcha Et Yom Chag Ploni Hazeh Baruch Ata Hashem Mekadesh Shabbat VeYisrael VeHazimanim. So what are we saying here? that if he forgot both of them, it's both Shabbat and Yom Tov. What he's going to do is put them both in one blessing, right? Condense them into one blessing. V'chol brachot halalu b'shem malchut. So he says all these blessings are also with the name of God and the kingdom. V'had esagi b'had bracha. B'had bracha. He says that's which we say that blessing is enough. Tafka kashnizkar. That's only if you remembered. Kulam sheitchila tov v'mitiv. Only if you started. He didn't start tov v'mitiv yet. This fourth blessing. But if you didn't remember until you began to mitiv, tzarich lachazor lerosh birkat hamazon. So he has to return to the beginning of Birkat Hamazon, right? That's going to be a problem, right? Poor guy. He's going to have to go back all the way, right, and do it again, the whole thing from the top. Okay, so you know what? Before we go on, maybe I should just explain to you guys, right? What these, what is the language of these blessings? What are they really saying, right? It's very simple, I mean, language, but let's just read through it for a second. So you understand. If you look in your Siddur, you'll find it there. I mean, translated and everything. But maybe you won't have time to do that. So I'll try to do for you. At least right, I'll do a little. Right, I'll give you a little taste of it, whatever, and then you can see the deluxe version in your Siddur. So what is it? What is the blessing saying? Right? It says like this: Baruch Ata Hashem, blessed are you, God. Elokeinu melech haolam, right? Our God, the King of the universe. Shenatan Shabbatot imucha. He gave us Shabbat for rest, right? Le'amo Yisrael, to his people Israel, be'ahava, with love, leot brit, as a sign and a covenant. Baruch Ata Hashem, blessed are you, God. Mikadesh Shabbat, right? And he sanctifies the Shabbat. And Yom Tov is the same concept, right? The same idea there. You're blessing God for Shabbat. You're blessing God for Yom Tov, and so forth and so on, right? Same idea. Except, right, on Yom Tov, you find a little bit of a different language there, right? It says in Yom Tov 1, right? Asher natananu yamin tovim l'Yisrael l'sasonu l'simcha. He gave us Yom Tov for gladness and rejoicing. But Shabbat, he says rest, right? Not gladness and rejoicing. Do you guys know why that is? Right? Why does it say in Shabbat only rest? But on Yom Tov, it says gladness and rejoicing. So I'll explain to you. There's actually a machloket about this, I'm sorry, yeah, you have something to say?
Isn't it because of the commandment that it says, Kabbalah that Shabbat is the day of rest, or no?
Yeah, of course, yeah, it's true. It's true what you're saying. But why this one says rest and why this one says gladness and rejoicing. So I'll explain to you guys something interesting, right? It's good to know this, that there's actually a machloket in the poskim, whether there's a mitzvah to have simcha on Shabbat, or is it only on Yom Tov you're supposed to have simcha? So they say, right, the ones who say you don't have to have simcha on Shabbat, they say, well, it doesn't say simcha on Shabbat, it just says, rest, menucha, right? That's what it says. So Shabbat is for rest, and Yom Tov is for simcha. That's one opinion, There's also another opinion that says on Shabbat also you're supposed to do, simcha. In the Zohar it says like that, that Shabbat is also for simcha. You're supposed to have simcha on Shabbat. So that's the reason why you have two different languages, because mainly Shabbat, right, is for rest, and mainly Yom Tov is for simcha, That's the objective there. Okay, whatever, right? That's the way we have different language there. So what else we got here? Yeah, so we're done with that one. Okay, so we can try We can try another one. We have more time. So let's go to the next one. So it says in Tet, כתב הכלבו שלושה שאכלו בשבתות בימים טובים וזימנו ושכחו להזכיר מהן המאורע והן צריכים לחזור. So he says like this, the kolbo, right? Let's say three people ate together on Shabbat or Yom Tov, whatever it is, right? And they made zimun, but they forgot to mention the holiday. So then now they have to do it again. The Rosh Bracha, Birkat Hamazon. They have to go back to the beginning of Birkat Hamazon. Yivarchu kol echad le'atzmo, or it says each one should bless by himself. Ki midi zimun yatsu, because they already did, fill the obligation of zimun. Ah, okay. V'hen tzrichim lachazor zamin. So they don't have to do zimun again. So that's very interesting, right? What he's saying here. So again, right, to recap this, what is he saying? He's saying that if there was three people who ate, okay, and it was Shabbat or Yom Tov, whatever, or both, whatever. So they did zimun, right? You guys know what's zimun? We're going to talk about that, right? But you guys know what that is?
No,
So-
I'm sorry. No.
Because
zim-
this one they reset the blessing of the cup of wine, the three people, no?
Right, that's after, but before the Birkat Hamazon, is something called zimun there. So what is zimun? The word zimun means like invitation. So you're like reciting, an invitation for everybody to do Birkat Hamazon. It's like you're inviting them, kind of. That's called zimun, and we like bless God there, we bless Hashem there for providing us with a meal. So that's only done when you have three people at least, right? You have to have at least three people for that. Um, so that's what he's talking about, right? When there's three people, you do zimun. So now the thing is, what happened over here? They did zimun, right? We're going to talk about that, by the way, later on, because it's a part of the Birkat Hamazon. There's several rules about that. But anyway, so it says like this, right? That three people ate, and it was, holiday, whatever, Shabbat, and they did zimun. But you know what happened? They forgot to mention the holiday, right? So now what happens? They have to bless again, right? As we said, right? They didn't mention Shabbat. They didn't mention Yom Tov. One or the other or both, right? They forgot. So they have to do it again. So he says, right, that even though they have to do it again, but since they already did Zimun, they don't do Zimun again, Zimun was already done. So now what you have to do is do just Birkat Hamazon again, without Zimun. So what does that mean? That means that each one will bless now by himself. It won't be like one doing it for everybody. Why? Because there's no Zimun here, right? So everybody, every man for himself, as they say, right? Each one is going to do it by himself. Since there's no zimun, so therefore, right, they will be katamazon again. This time to put in the proper insert, for the holiday, for Shabbat, for the occasion, whatever it is. That's what he's saying. That's Tet. Okay, so let's go Shulchan Aruch. זה שולחן ערוך. It looks like I skipped something over here, but anyway, I'll go do that first and then we'll go back to this. Right, it's this one. So it says over here, Shulchan Aruch like this. Mishi achlu b'shabbatot yom tovim. Let's say they ate on Shabbat and Yom Tov. V'shachlu le'azkir men mara. Right, and they forgot to mention, as we said, right, the insert for the holiday for Shabbat. V'hem tzrichim lechazor l'rosh Birkat Hamazon. So they have to go back and do it again. The Birkat Hamazon. Yivarech kol echad b'fnei atzmo. So what you do is each one's going to bless by himself now. Ki midi zimun kvar yatsu, because they already did zimun, so they don't have to do now again, right? To repeat that whole, ritual with the zimun. It's not necessary to do that. Okay, so that's one thing. Then we're going to go back to do the one before because we skipped a couple here. Because the Bet Yosef is like staggered. It's in the wrong, it's not in the right order. So that's why it came out this way. So let's go back there and see that again. Like we jumped from Vav to Tet. Now we have to do Zayin and Chet. So let's try that. So Zayin says like this, right? Rosh Chodesh. So what happened if you don't mention Rosh Chodesh, right? We already talked about if you forgot to mention Shabbat or Yom Tov. Now we're going to Rosh Chodesh. What happens over there? Some say since he didn't conclude yet, he doesn't have to go back to the beginning of Birkat Hamazon. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. One more time. Right. So if he didn't mention Rosh Chodesh, he makes this insert over here, right? Right? Blessed is the one who gave Rosh Chodesh to his people as a remembrance. So in the Gemara, there's a doubt about this. What's the doubt? Do you mention Simcha or not? So, right, again, same issue here. What does that mean? Mishum de Rosh Chodesh lo shech besimcha. Because Rosh Chodesh is not really, there's no mitzvah of Simcha in Rosh Chodesh. Or perhaps, right, it says, but since it says, right, that it's to them your joy, Rosh Chodeshechem, and then Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh the mod. So you see, right, the Rosh Chodesh compared to the holiday. But lo if shita, and the answer wasn't answered this question in the Gemara. So therefore, we don't mention Simcha on Rosh Chodesh. But there's also another doubt in the Gemara. Im chatim elo. Do you seal this blessing or not? Right? Does it have a conclusion? Right? It says the Rif, we don't seal this. Right? You guys understand what I'm saying when I say sealing it? You get my jargon, or should I explain it to you?
Kavod Harav has to do with that little piece that it's at the end of the blessing, no? Meaning
No,
before.
Sealing it means the conclusion. Baruch Atah Hashem, right? Like that, right? And this and this and that, right? That's the seal. That's the conclusion of the blessing.
Yes. That's
what I'm talking about. So there are some of them that do have, you do seal them, and some of them you don't. So here, this one, right? It's a machloket there in the Talmud, right? It's a doubt whether you're supposed to seal it or not. So. So therefore, right, says the Rif that you should not, because of the doubt. But the Re says you should, right? Machloket here. Right? So the Rosh right agrees with the Re. Ve'elo mitkat depatach tov v'metiv lo hadar l'resha. So he says, but if you didn't remember, right, to mention this, and you started already to do hatov v'metiv, the next blessing, lo hadar l'resha, he doesn't have to go back to the beginning, right? Because Rosh Chodesh is not so crucial like the other holidays, the other occasions that we mentioned. Damar Shemuel ta'a v'lo izkir shel Rosh Chodesh b'tefillah machzin oto. So Shmuel says like this, right? If he made a mistake, he didn't mention Rosh Chodesh in the prayers, in the Birkat Hamazon, I'm sorry, in the tefillah, we tell him to go back. But, right, if it's Birkat Hamazon, we don't tell him to go back. My ta'amat tefillah de lo matze patar nafshe machzin oto. So he says, what's the reason why? Because a prayer where he cannot absolve himself, we tell him to go back, but right, so I'll say this one more time, right? I didn't say it right. So it says, because when it comes to tefillah, when it comes to prayer, Amidah, right, you cannot absolve yourself, you have to say it. You're obligated. So therefore we tell him to go back. But Birkat Hamazon, right, that you can absolve yourself from Birkat Hamazon. How do you absolve yourself from Birkat Hamazon?
Is it when if you're married, isn't it a virgin?
Don't eat bread, right? That's how you absolve yourself.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
don't eat bread, right? Have something else, right? Eat some rice, whatever, right? Whatever. So that's how you absolve yourself. So you don't have to say, you don't have to say it because you can get out of it if you want. So therefore, right, since you can get out of it, that's why we say that he's not obligated, to go back and do it again. If he wants to eat, he can eat. If he doesn't want to eat, right, don't eat. Do whatever you want. The perush, דבר שצריך ברכת המזון, שאפשר שיאכל פירות וירקות רק שלא יתענה, שאסור להתענות בראש חודש. So he says, right, on Rosh Chodesh, right, there's two things, an interesting thing there, that, you're not really obligated to eat bread on Rosh Chodesh. Even though it's a mitzvah to have a seudah, it is a mitzvah, but you're not obligated. But, on the other hand, you're not allowed to fast on Rosh Chodesh, not allowed to. So therefore you have to eat, but you don't have to eat bread. So there is a way, to eat but not eat bread, and this way you won't have to do Birkat Hamazon. That's what he's telling you. So therefore, you don't have to go back if you forgot it. לא אכיל פירוש דבר שצריך ברכת המזון, שאפשר שיאכל פירות או ירקות רק שלא יתענה, שאסור להתענות בראש חודש, ילקח לא מהדין עליהם. Exactly what I just told you. בכל מקום, כל זמן שלא פתח בטוב מטיב, but he says, nevertheless, if you didn't yet start טוב ומטיב, right, that next blessing, אומר ברוך שנתן אפילו בלילה, so then he says, right, this insert, even at night, even though regarding prayers, we don't tell them to go back. And al shichat chodesh belayla, if you forgot at night for Arvit, that's not to go back. But it says to add a blessing, afilu belayla nami, even at night. Im chal rosh chodesh b'Shabbat. So then he says, if Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbat. So okay, so I guess we'll stop there. We'll finish it next time, B'ezrat Hashem. There's still a little bit more here to do to finish this chapter. We're almost done with it. Another 10-15 minutes, B'ezrat Hashem. So we'll try to get to that next time. So thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Thanks for your patience with this internet problem here. So we'll see you tomorrow. Leila Tov, Chazak Baruch. We should hear B'ezrat Hashem. Good news. More hostages released. B'ezrat Hashem.
Thank you so much, Kapata.
God bless.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All the best.